Welcome to the Leaders Serving Beaver County video series. We're here today with Dr. Jim Dittmar, a board director of Leaders Serving Beaver County and former chair of the Masters of Organizational Leadership program at Geneva College. I'm Mark Miner, publisher of the book Forged in Steel. And Jim, you've been lecturing, leading a conversation about Forged in Steel the past several months. The book is authored by Tunch Ilkin of the Steelers and by Damian Williams of Leadership League. The book takes a look at the Steelers' 7 time-tested leadership principles that have helped them field competitive teams year after year after year, and has really made them a model organization unlike any other in the National Football League.
Without a doubt.
And so this morning, you led a conversation about servant leadership, which is chapter 3 of the book.
Yes.
And that's a very overused term in our society anymore. But as you have studied the book, as you've done just decades worth of research and lecturing and teaching on the subject, how do you take these theories and research and actually turn them into practice?
Well, I think those are two separate issues. One is certainly the concepts themselves. You have to understand, I think it's very important to understand, what do people say servant leadership is? What about the people who write about it? What about the people who research it? What is it? How do they describe it? Do they describe it in terms of behaviors, the qualities of the person, the behaviors of the person, something about the skills and abilities of the person? What is it? What is it? Because I think that's foundational to beginning the journey of becoming a servant leader. Now, for some people, it's a brand new concept. I've never heard about this before in my life. I don't know what you're talking about. I've never even considered leading in this way. For others, it's a confirmation when they begin to read and they begin to understand that there is something out there called servant leadership. It's a confirmation of what they've been doing. I think that's what I do. I think that's who I am. As I go back and think about who am I and how do I interact with people. So that in the first case, it's startling, it's mind-blowing, it's upsetting, so to speak. And as they begin to understand what it is. For others, this confirmation, this idea that I'm reading about something that's describing what I've done or who I am, it gives them even greater understanding, a greater ability to articulate what it is that they've been doing that in fact is servant leadership, to explain it to others, and to even get stronger in their commitment to it, because now they understand, yes, this is something that I can work on and get better at. So it's important to understand the concepts, how people write about it. There are a number of different approaches. There's no one single, this is the agreed upon model. There's a whole bunch of them out there. So you read, you understand, but the translation of that from here to internal, taken for granted behavior and attitudes and perspectives, things that you just start doing.
It shows up every day at work.
Automatically, that's the tough transition.
And how do you put that into execution? How do you get it from your head to your heart?
Yeah, and again, I think there's several approaches, but it's a hard journey.
Yes, of course.
Behavior change is not easy, and depending on where you're starting from in particular. But I think, and what I've encouraged people to do and what I've seen people do is to begin considering what are some of the behaviors I can do right now that reflect the practice of
some baby steps.
Yeah, even if it's not my internal compass just yet, even though it's not my automatic, I'm going to intentionally begin to practice these behaviors, and I'm going to observe what the response is that I get, and I'm going to try to begin to see that it's possible for me to actually behave this way.
What do you see as the most challenging aspect of putting servant leadership into practice?
Well, I think it's the individual, it's the person, and it comes down to, I think, motive. What's the motive for what it is you do? Period. Why are you leading? Why are you engaged in this organization? Why are you involved with this group of people? Who's it about? Is it about me? Is it about them?
And what's the answer to that?
Well, how you answer that helps determine how difficult it's going to be to get on this journey. If you don't have an altruistic, motivational spirit, if your character does not include the notion that it's okay if I'm not always the person. It's okay if my ego isn't stroked 24 hours a day. It's okay. I'm secure enough. It doesn't matter if I'm not in the limelight. All these deferential, not doormat concept of attitudes. That's not what I'm talking about. Because that's a criticism. Oh, this stuff is so soft, and so all you're doing is doing what everybody else wants you to do, and you just get walked all over. And how can you, in a tough business world today, forget it? Well, that's a lie. It's an untruth. Because there are companies today who are outperforming other companies because they practice this kind of leadership. Mm-hmm. There are several that come to mind right away. Southwest, incredible example. Herb Kellerman, from the get-go, said, I'm going to lead like this, and I'm going to make money in the process.
You're talking about the airlines.
Yeah, Southwest Airlines. Yes, thank you. And I've interviewed flight attendants touring a flight, asking questions that I have read and studied that are apparently the case at Southwest. And I've asked them questions. Is this true? Tell me about how you were hired. Tell me about how, the leaders of the organization relate to you and all this kind of stuff. And it was down the line. Yes, 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 yes. This is who we are.
So as you study then that the servant leadership, the Steelers way.
Yes.
What impresses you about how the Rooney family, the ownership family, since 1933, the original founding family that's still in control of the team today, what impresses you about the Rooney way, the Steeler way of servant leadership?
Well, I think a couple of things. First of all, it's very much faith-based. They draw upon that. The chief, many stories about the chief and his faith, and his church going and his reliance on that part of his life, integrating it into, it wasn't just a go to church kind of thing, but it spilled over, it integrated and influenced every part of his life, it appeared. And so that's I think that's an important starting point. The other thing is how woven into the DNA of the organization these concepts, these principles became, because it was not an exception.
Can you give some examples?
Well, in the book, I read examples, the one that Tunch loves to talk about, and that is his encounter with two other players, new players, with the chief in the office area, and he was emptying ashtrays, I think.
The chief was.
The chief was.
Yeah.
And, one player assumed it was the janitor.
Right.
And
it
the
was
chief,
the team's owner.
And the chief did not correct that misperception, and simply said something like, well, I do a lot of things around here. That kind. But just other attitudes. I know I heard the gentleman who is the person that negotiates.
Omar Khan.
Omar.
From the Steelers front office.
And I heard him speak about his work and how he is involved in negotiating.
Yes.
And
he manages the salary cap.
The salary cap. And he talked about servant leadership. I mean, he used that terminology and how he views his role as a servant leader in trying to protect the interests of both the organization and the players.
Yes.
And boy, what a difference, instead of cutthroat, negotiation, and you're not going to get a penny less, and I'm not going to take anything less than that, and all this, this back and forth. I'm sure that in the negotiating process, that for the most part, not everything works out the way you like, I'm sure, but for the most part, it just sets a tone. It says, let's figure this out. Let's see if we can't make it work for both parties. And there's some examples of players in the past who have either not taken huge increases, re-signed at the same level just because they wanted to stay with the organization.
They wanted to stay a Steeler.
Yeah, but that idea that this is not, culturally, this is not an anomaly to see that kind of behavior. It's the expectation.
It's permeated all throughout the organization.
That's right, top to bottom.
So the next class will be January 19th,
Yes.
2017, right back here at Penn State Beaver, about strategic team making, the
Yes.
Steelers way. And then future classes include February 16th.
Passionate execution.
Passionate execution.
Passionate execution. You hear about execution all the time, especially when the Steelers don't win.
That's
we
right.
didn't execute. But there's a commitment to passionate execution.
March 16th is
Continuous improvement. Always wanting to get better. Huge.
sometimes known as deliberate practice.
There you go.
Deliberate practice, working on the things that you're not good at.
That's right.
And then closing.
And getting better at the things you're good at.
And get better. And then April 20th, we close the series on the subject of mental toughness.
Mental toughness. You hear a lot in sports. How mentally tough is somebody?
And Tunch likes to say that the players that he knows that are most mentally tough are the ones who are the most weathered. They've been in the valleys, they've been at the peaks, they've been beaten up the most, and they really have a reference point of where their pain level is.
Yes, and some of those same people he also refers to as some of the most wonderful mentors.
Yes.
and wonderful servants.
Yes.
In that sense to him.
Yes.
Even though rough, tough, these people have it, they have
Yes.
resilience, they've
Yes.
been there.
Yes.
Nevertheless, had that piece of them that was built in that said, I want to help, I want to see you get better.
To RSVP for any of the upcoming breakfasts, please visit our website at www.ls-bc.org. That's ls-bc.org. If you'd like a signed copy of the book, visit our website at www.forgedinsteel.org. That's forgedinsteel.org. And there it is.
I got my signatures. I have my signatures right there.
And that's a keeper. You want to hand that down
That's
to your
it, man.
great-grandchildren, Jim. So
I've got
thank you, and hope to see you at a future class.